Yeah, so as I was saying, based out of New York City, I'm excited about DeFi because in school and in life, I'm very excited about computer science and finance, and I think, DeFi is the perfect marriage of those two interests of mine. And when I think about DeFi, I get both excited and a little bit worried. So what is DeFi? Smart contract-enabled finance allows for more flexibility and disintermediation than any prior financial products. The types of DeFi products are constantly growing, from permissionless lending, index funds, synthetic assets, insurance, and more. Lending is currently the most popular application in DeFi. And as you can see in the corner, a couple of examples of lending protocols in DeFi: Maker, DYDX, Compound. So this is kind of why I'm worried. Instead of people thinking about the best rate, people are looking at the best risk. They should be looking at the best risk-adjusted rate. There's no such thing as a free lunch, as we all know. And as these products get more complex, I think these issues are going to be even more exacerbated. So yeah, I think this kind of sums up some of the issues in DeFi pretty well. I don't know if you guys know what a lot of these things are, but they're all kind of different layers of the DeFi stack. And this is great because the level of innovation and composability here is pretty unmatched. But as the cost of creating financial products trends towards zero, with great power comes great responsibility. As we can see in the legacy finance world, things that have been audited and reviewed by multiple independent parties can still blow up. So what happens when we have compounding smart contract risk like this? So nobody wants this, obviously. I don't think it's going to happen, but there is a non-zero probability. Maker is a world-class team and product, not trying to spread FUD. Just trying to drive home the point that as an ecosystem, we need to be responsible, especially as DeFi grows. So let's have a rigorous approach to risk and make sure that it's at the forefront of creating new financial products. It shouldn't be an afterthought. So all lending protocols are not created equal. Comparing rates is hard. And the rates are different because there's different risk-reward profiles here. The average person is not very good at making optimal financial decisions. There's too many pitfalls. So as DeFi grows, how do we ensure that users are encouraged to make optimal financial decisions? I couldn't find a good solution to that problem. So I set out to improve the way we think about it and, more importantly, communicate risk to the DeFi public. Interest rates alone aren't enough. Similar to how one wouldn't treat a AAA bond and a C bond as interest rates is the same. So I decided to do a risk assessment and try to quantitatively assess the risks affecting different products. So the DeFi score is an open source methodology to quantify the technical and financial stability of a DeFi protocol. DeFi platforms are complex and include new types of risks that differ from traditional financial markets. For example, code risk that is too difficult or unfamiliar for even the most advanced users to understand. To launch, we'll consider some of the largest and most easily quantifiable risks. Remember that the intention of this score is to better educate users on the unique nuances of smart contract-enabled financial markets. This model can and should grow over time. So the first point that we're going to look at is smart contract security. Smart contract bugs can cause real financial harm. We've seen this DAO hack, parity multisig bugs. It causes huge amount of social damage to the ecosystem on top of the huge amount of financial damage. So smart contract risk is quite similar to counterparty risk in a traditional finance sense. And while no smart contract can be guaranteed to be devoid of bugs, a thorough code audit and formal verification processes from a reputable security firm helps uncover critical high-severity bugs that could result in financial harm to users. On top of that, bug bounty programs are another positive indicator that the development team takes security seriously by incentivizing independent security researchers to discover protocol bugs, ultimately allowing for a more widespread security review. So on top of this, there's another factor to kind of smart contract risk, which in my opinion, is smart contract openness. We as an industry deeply believe in this mantra, don't trust, verify. And if a contract's bytecode isn't verified, then it's fairly opaque to its users. Part of the promise of DeFi is that the functionality of smart contracts is completely on-chain, which means they are verifiable and transparent. Developers still have ways to obscure, like using off-chain kind of data, oracles, and not verifying bytecode. Security through obscurity offers weak security guarantees at best, and at worst, delays in finding critical bugs. But code risk is only one aspect of the risks one faces when looking at DeFi products. The second aspect is financial risk. So crypto makes for bad collateral. It's very volatile. It's illiquid. And the only way that without a on-chain identity and reputation method, the only way to avoid credit risk is through over-collateralization. While all of the current platforms use very conservative collateral factors, the highly volatile nature of crypto means that these high collateral factors may be insufficient. And we've seen this before. Poloniex had an issue with this recently, where they were allowing this token called clams that was very illiquid to be used for margin trading. Clams flash crashed, and it ended up that 1,800 BTC worth of losses had to be socialized. The makeup of collateral assets that back these different DeFi platforms have a high level of variation, with some being much more liquid and stable assets than others. For example, a platform that may be primarily backed by ETH, while ETH is still a very volatile asset, it's relatively stable and liquid compared to an asset like Link, or insert many other assets there. These collateral makeup differences are an important factor when thinking about platform risk. So there's a lot of different methods that you can look at when evaluating portfolio risk. We decided to use the conditional value at risk model as opposed to just a regular value at risk model because we thought it better captured extreme scenarios, which is what we're looking for here. Liquidity and insolvency crises often go hand in hand. There are numerous historical examples of these types of crises. The one on the left, the Great Depression in the United States, pretty famous image. Scenes like this were the impetus for creating the FDIC. But that being said, these crises are also in recent memory. On the left, 2007, Northern Rock. So most of these systems were designed to avoid these types of issues, but they are by no means impervious to them. So incentivized liquidity doesn't mean guaranteed liquidity. If you were to lend your money out on one of these protocols and all of the assets had been borrowed, you wouldn't be able to get your money back. This has actually happened on Compound recently when the Instadap bridge was created, which caused a liquidity squeeze and forced Compound to change their interest rate model. That being said, financial and code risks are not the only types of risks users of these products face. So we're going to dig into a couple of other things that I think are important to highlight. These factors are a little harder to quantify, but we included them in the model because we think they're important. So none of these protocols have insurance. There are options to buy insurance on the blockchain, like Nexus Mutual, but the lack of widespread insurance, I think, is a big usability problem. And some of these protocols have dedicated interest funds to insurance pools, but none of them are large enough to cover any sort of serious insolvency or illiquidity event. So in its current state, most of DeFi isn't actually decentralized. It's smart contract-based centralized finance. If you want to read more about this topic in particular, Amin from SpankChain wrote an interesting article about the centralization risk in Compound. So if the DeFi protocol you're using couldn't survive a government shutdown order, it's not DeFi. That being said, there's nothing wrong with starting with a centralized model and eventually decentralizing aspects of that model. This is how many of the current DeFi products are positioned. Keep in mind, a lot of these projects are also privately funded and have absolutely no mandate to eventually decentralize. I have faith, but it's a risk worth being aware of. So these are all the current aspects of the model. Let's dig into some real life scores and how we formulate them. So this is the general weighting of the algorithm. They're opinion-based and somewhat arbitrary, and we expect them to change over time as we improve this model. Worth noting as well that we're comparing lending protocols on a relative basis, not an absolute basis. So if protocols with different attributes scored closely, the score wouldn't be as meaningful. So here's some scores. Just a quick disclaimer, I hadn't had a chance to update the model with the newest methodology, so this is using a slightly older methodology. But you can see the scores here and some of the reasons why they scored in different ways. Having these scores are great, but how can we educate and inform DeFi users of these risk factors is a critical part of this initiative. So here's a sample visualization of what a score could look like and how it's communicated to an end user. The underlying methodology is fairly complex, but that doesn't mean it can't be simple for a user to understand. Even with a robust and validated methodology, one that's much more robust than this, it can't really help the industry as a whole if it isn't easily understood by the average DeFi user, who will be less and less informed as this industry grows. Because right now it's mainly computer and finance nerds. So just a few closing thoughts before I open it up to questions. Just wanted to go over some of the limitations of this model. It's not a validated statistical model. We're pretty scant on data so far. We were trying to look at the overall protocols and not individual positions. We hope to make this model much more robust going forward. Some of these risks are difficult to quantify. It's opinion-based, and we're missing some risks that I think are important to include going forward, like centralization risks, oracle risks, market liquidity risk via liquidation policies. And here's some potential future work that we're thinking about with some of this scoring stuff. Scoring additional products, breaking out the subcomponents, providing an API for other products to leverage. In the coming couple of weeks, we're open sourcing this methodology and an implementation to get community input and hopefully improve it in a more decentralized manner. And eventually, the dream is to kind of DAOify the management of this scoring algorithm and have it serve as a public good. So, maybe this talk was a little bit drearier than, DeFi is great, the future is amazing. But that being said, I'm really excited about the future of DeFi. And if you're not involved yet, you're missing out. I think the parallel financial system is reaching escape velocity. Synthetic assets, on-chain insurance are going to allow us to hedge away a lot of these risks. But we need to be aware of these risks before we can hedge them. Let's be responsible when creating this new system. If you want to help shape the future of risk management, please get involved. The open source code is coming soon. Hit me up on Telegram if you want to get involved. If you just search DeFi Score on Telegram, we've set up a channel for further discussion. And feel free to reach out to me on GitHub or Twitter. That's it. Does anybody have any questions?
So, do you cover any non-collateralized unsecured lending?
Protocol, if they do exist, I don't even know if they exist.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's any real products.
Just repeat the question, just for the
Okay, the question was, do you cover any products that are unsecured lending? The answer is no, we don't. There's not really any examples in DeFi right now, just because there's no reputation or identity built into these products yet. So collateralization is the main way to avoid like high amounts of credit risk. I expect that to change in the coming years, but it doesn't exist right now, so we're not covering it.
Because it's just like saying basically DeFi only addresses margin lending, which is a pretty niche sub-market of the overall lending market, right? So it's very much people about trading or doing some, so people who in a sense already have substantial asset that can do lending on chain or over the blockchain.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, secured lending versus unsecured lending is, it's a tiny part of the pie. I think it was the easiest thing for DeFi to start with, and that's why it's popular right now. But as I said, I think as like online reputation and identity systems become more widespread, I think you'll see that change.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I have a question about, do you think Ethereum 2.0 has influence on decentralized lending and smart contracts in general in DeFi?
Could you be a little bit more specific?
Like the change from proof of work to proof of stake, will that influence the smart contracts on Ethereum?
I mean, I'm not super plugged into Ethereum 2.0 and how it's going to affect DeFi, but from my knowledge, I would say no. The whole point of Ethereum 2.0 is to offer similar security guarantees with better scalability. Some inter-shard communication stuff could maybe make that a little bit complicated, but I don't think it's going to have any material effect on a lot of these products now.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much. You spoke today just about the decentralized lending protocols, but do you have any resources you can recommend on the more centralized lending services, such as Nexo or Celsius?
In terms of risk assessment, or just kind of talking about them in general?
Mainly risk assessment.
I don't say I have any recommendations. It's a lot harder with some of these centralized parties, just because this data isn't on chain, it's not verifiable. I'm trying to remember the name of this. I think it's called Grayscale. I'll look it up after and I'll tell you. But they published a good kind of report on like both CeFi and DeFi lending products. Not super focused on risk, but a good overview. I think that's worth reading.
I have one more question. Yeah, and I think you brought up a really good point that DeFi, nothing is really decentralized yet, and there's this concept of minimum viable decentralization. Like, what would be your suggested nomenclature for the scale of completely decentralized to fully centralized? Like, should there be another assessment based on how decentralized something is? Because right now it just seems so black and white, and it definitely isn't.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a problem in the industry in general. Bitcoiners love to call Ethereum centralized, but it's a scale. Nothing is, or some things are completely centralized, but most things that are decentralized aren't completely decentralized. It's a spectrum. I think DeFi is a misnomer, as I said. It's catchy. I think that's why everyone uses it, and it's just an easy way to kind of bucket all of this smart contract enabled finance. I can't think of anything that's catchier than DeFi, but I think smart contract enabled finance is maybe better captures what these products actually are. Okay, thanks for, go ahead.
So say you have a very big lending protocol, but it's not open source.
Mm-hmm.
It has a lot of liquidity. The fact that it's not open source is about half of your scoring. That would fare really poorly in comparison with the small. However, this would actually, for users, it'd be much more safe to use, especially if they trust. I mean, if it has established some form of reputation. So, how do you see your scoring being relevant in that context?
Yeah, so I would say that the open source nature of the contracts is only one piece of the smart contract security. It's not like the whole 50% you're just getting knocked off if your contracts aren't open source. We're focused mainly on smart contract enabled finance with this methodology. So it's possible that they have smart contracts. They're just the bytecode isn't verified. So I think if they had really high liquidity, they would obviously get points off for not not having the contracts being open, but they would also have the advantage of being scored well for their liquidity. So I think, you know, it could balance out in a way that they don't get an absolutely terrible score.
Okay, because I was just surprised to see actually it's a full 50% for audit of the smart contract, which you may not be able to access anyway. So say tomorrow HSBC decide to do some blockchain lending, and they have a good reputation at least for lending, and they have a lot of liquidity. But if you would apply your methodology, how would that compare with you know, an unknown, untested protocol?
Right, right. I mean, an unknown, untested protocol would likely have very little liquidity. So, you know, even if it did have
something a bit, you know, a bit more established, like some of the Ethereum-based protocols.
Right, right. I mean, it's hard to say without, you know, actually seeing the data and putting it into the model. But, you know, if they were using smart contracts and the liquidity was good, the collateral that was backing it was solid, you know, it's very likely that this hypothetical HSBC product could score decently as well. I think, you know,
even if you haven't seen a line of the code.
Even if you haven't seen a lot of their code, there's obviously a lot of trust there, and smart contract audits, formal verification that's public is very important on the smart contract scoring as well. But again, I don't know if HSBC is going to be, you know, getting into smart contract enabled finance anytime soon, unfortunately.
Yeah, I was just trying to place your rating scoring methodology in the context of you know, another potential big actor coming into the space.
Yep. No, and you know, I think it would be very exciting, and you know, given this current methodology, I think, you know, they could score decently if they were smart contracts, even if they weren't open source. Okay. Thank you very much.